The planet Nimasin was the galaxy's ultimate intelligence trap. It wasn't a world of fortresses or orbital cannons. It was a world of pure, unadulterated information. The dominant species, the Mnemic Swarm, were the ultimate tactical predators. They didn't just kill their enemies, they hollowed them. The swarm possessed a unique biological ability. They could absorb the neural patterns of any sentient being within a 5-mile radius. When a soldier landed on Nimasin, the swarm didn't just see their body, they saw their training, their fears, their childhood memories, and most importantly, their mission objectives. If a human commander planned a flanking maneuver, the swarm knew it before the order was even whispered into a radio. If a pilot had a specific trick for dodging missiles, the swarm learned that trick the second the pilot entered the atmosphere. The swarm was a mirror, a perfect, lethal reflection of its enemy's own genius. Every army that had ever tried to conquer Nimasin had been defeated by their own tactics, used against them with a speed and ferocity that no biological mind could counter. To the swarm, the galaxy was a buffet of intellect. They grew smarter with every war. They had mastered the arts of ambush from the Veil Corée, the arts of siege from the Centaurians, and the arts of orbital bombardment from the early human pioneers. The humans' return, the swarm overmind pulsed through the planet's neural crust. Its voice was a trillion stolen whispers. They bring their heavy guns. They bring their hatred. We shall drink their plans. We shall eat their courage. We shall become more human than the humans themselves, and then we shall extinguish them. The first 2 waves of the Terran invasion were absolute massacres. The swarm anticipated every strike. They laid traps in the exact spots the human generals thought were safe. They used human radio codes to lure dropships into kill zones. It was like fighting a god that could read your diary. General Stone Cold Sterling, watching the slaughter from the bridge of the UNS Tabula Rasa, didn't panic. He was a man who understood that if you can't outthink an enemy, you have to unthink them. They're copycats, Sterling growled, staring at the psychic interference monitors. They rely on a constant stream of data. They're like a fire that needs the wood of our thoughts to burn. Well, it's time to cut off the fuel. He turned to a man standing in the corner, a man whose face was a map of scars and whose eyes held a strange, vacant calm. Sergeant Blank Jenkins. Are your boys ready for the loop? Ready as we'll ever be, sir, Jenkins replied. We've already forgotten why we're here once today. What's one more time? Sterling nodded. Initiate the Mnemic Erasure Protocol. The mind wipers of the 101st Void Runners were not normal soldiers. They were volunteers who had undergone a radical, temporary neurological procedure. Each man was fitted with a cerebral loop clock, a device built into their helmets that delivered a precise, localized electromagnetic pulse to the short-term memory centers of the brain every 5 minutes. The mission was simple. Land on the surface, find the swarm's central neural spire, and plant the demolition charges. The catch. Every 5 minutes their minds would be wiped clean. They would wake up in the middle of a war zone with no idea how they got there, no memory of their previous orders, and no plan for the future. They had to rely entirely on 2 things, muscle memory and physical cues. Sergeant Jenkins stepped off the ramp of the dropship into the glowing, pulsating jungles of Nimasin. Blink. The red light on his helmet flashed. Jenkins blinked his eyes. He was standing in a swamp of glowing vines. He was holding a heavy, belt-fed shotgun. He had a map taped to his left forearm and a giant arrow drawn in permanent marker on his right glove pointing forward. Taped to the stock of his gun was a single note. Keep walking. Kill anything that glows. Don't think. All right, Jenkins muttered, his voice flat. I guess I'm killing things today. Behind him, 12 other men woke up in the same state. They didn't talk. They didn't strategize. They simply followed the arrows. The Mnemic Swarm reacted instantly. They reached out with their psychic tendrils, prepared to feast on the humans' tactical brilliance. They expected to find complex maneuvers, fear-filled memories of home, and detailed maps of the human supply lines. Instead, they hit a wall of nothing. The overmind recoiled in confusion. It reached into Jenkins' mind and found a 5-minute loop of sensory data, the smell of mud, the weight of the gun, and the sight of an arrow. There was no plan. There was no fear. There was only the mechanical repetition of the present moment. Where are the thoughts? The swarm pulsed in a panicked vibration. Where are the memories of training? Where is the intent? We cannot mirror a void. The swarm's greatest strength, its ability to adapt to its enemy, became its ultimate undoing. Because the humans were blank, the swarm had nothing to copy. Its warriors stood frozen in the jungle, their translucent heads flickering erratically as they tried to find a frequency they could understand. Jenkins saw a swarm warrior, a spindly, four-armed nightmare, standing in his path. The alien was waiting for Jenkins to think about firing, waiting for the neural spark that would allow it to dodge. Jenkins didn't think. His finger pulled the trigger because his muscles knew how to do it without permission from his brain. Boom boom boom. The heavy slugs tore through the alien, shattering its glowing head. Jenkins didn't celebrate. He didn't even feel relief. He just looked at the arrow on his glove and kept walking. Every 5 minutes, the light on his helmet would blink and Jenkins would restart. He would look at the map on his arm, see the blinking beacon of the neural spire in the distance, and continue his march. He was a biological machine, an agent of pure, mindless momentum. The swarm went into a state of neural collapse. They were the memory starvers, but they were the ones who were starving. Their hive mind was built to process complex data. When faced with the absolute vacuum of the human squad's minds, the swarm began to loop themselves. They started mimicking the emptiness of the humans, losing their own intelligence in the process. The humans, they are hollow, the overmind shrieked through the planet's crust. They have no past. They have no future. They are only the now. We cannot eat the now. The mind wipers reached the central neural spire, a towering mountain of pulsing brain tissue that controlled the entire planetary network. Blink. The light flashed. Sergeant Jenkins looked up. He was at the base of a giant, glowing organ. He looked at the instructions taped to his explosive charges. Plant here. Pull pin. Run fast. He didn't ask why. He didn't wonder about the morality of destroying a planetary consciousness. He simply did what the paper told him to do. He planted the charges. He pulled the pins. He looked at the arrow on his glove that now pointed back to Yo's ship. As the mind wipers retreated, the swarm made one last desperate attempt to stop them. They merged their consciousness into a single, massive psychic blast, attempting to force the humans to remember everything, to overwhelm them with their own forgotten lives. But the loop clock was faster. Blink. The psychic blast hit a mind that had just been wiped. The trauma had no place to land. The memories had no hooks to grab onto. The blast passed through Jenkins like wind through a ghost. The charges detonated. The explosion wasn't just physical, it was a neural shockwave. The central spire was torn apart, and with it, the entire collective memory of the Mnemic Swarm was erased. Millions of years of stolen tactics, thousands of civilizations worth of data, gone in a single fiery instant. The swarm didn't die, but they were lobotomized. They became simple, mindless creatures, wandering the glowing jungles with no purpose, no history and no way to fight back. General Sterling watched from the tabula rasa as the planet's bioluminescent glow dimmed and faded. The god of intelligence had been defeated by a group of men who couldn't remember their own middle names. The mission is a success, Sterling said quietly. Bring the boys home. Sergeant Jenkins sat in the dropship as it ascended into orbit. He looked at the blinking red light on his helmet. He looked at the map on his arm. He looked at the other men who were staring vacantly at the floor. Hey, Jenkins said to the man next to him. Do you know where we're going? The soldier looked at him and shrugged. No idea. But I've got an arrow on my glove that says, home. I guess that's good enough. Humanity had proven the ultimate psychological HFY truth. The universe is full of entities that want to steal your mind, your history, and your soul. They think that by knowing you they can own you. But we are a species that can survive even when we are empty. We are more than our memories. We are our instincts, our grit, and our willingness to sacrifice our past to ensure there is a future. You can't steal a plan from a man who doesn't have one. And you can't outsmart an enemy who has decided that thinking is optional. This has been Apex Sci-Fi. Forget the past. Win the war. If you enjoyed this vacant victory over the memory-stealing aliens, hit that like button. Comment below. If you had to forget one thing to win a war, what would it be? Subscribe for the next story in the New Frontier saga, the biotoxic backlash. The mind is clear. The mission is done.